Welcome to this explainer. Look, I want you to go ahead and just clear your mind for a second, because a closer look at our source material today is about to completely shatter literally everything you thought you knew about biblical purity laws. Seriously, the ancient rituals, the isolation, the so-called ancient hygiene, we're turning all of it on its head. Today, we're exploring the cosmic architecture of the messianic portfolio and the mobile temple. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The Cosmic Legal Crisis. Not a clinic, but a courtroom. So, we're going to dive into this by fundamentally changing how we read the book of Leviticus. We've all been trained to read it like it's some sort of primitive manual for public health, right? We look at it through this modern medical lens. We're thinking dermatology, hygiene, medical pathology. But the source makes a really compelling argument. That is a fatal interpretive error. The biblical text is absolutely not diagnosing a medical crisis. It is diagnosing a crisis of cosmic geography. Think about it less like a sterile medical clinic and more like a terrifying, high-stakes cosmic battleground. The reality is every earthly covenant breach has a direct legal parallel in the divine council. To really grasp this, we have to look at the Hebrew term sharatha, which we usually just weakly translate as leprosy. But sharatha isn't just a bad rash. It's an ontological defilement. And by that, I mean it's a corruption at the very deepest level of human existence and being. It's essentially anti-creation entropy. And because the individual and the community are treated as one single covenant body, this defilement creates a massive legal vulnerability. Picture the heavenly courtroom. The adversary points to this corrupted flesh and basically says, look, by your own covenant rules, this contamination cannot coexist with your holiness. I demand their exile. The accuser literally gains legal standing to demand the exile of God's people.
Section 2. The epistemic guardian. Reversing Eden's failure.
So how exactly does the Levitical priest navigate this intense legal crisis? Well, for starters, the priest is absolutely not a doctor prescribing medicine. He is what we call an epistemic guardian. Think all the way back to Eden for a second. The fall was ultimately a crisis of perception, wasn't it? Humanity seized autonomous judgment. We decided to judge good and evil by our own sight. The Levitical priest is there to reverse that exact failure. He is strictly forbidden from using his own human intuition or fear or even compassion. He just has to observe, the Hebrew word is ra, and judge entirely by God's revealed Torah to protect the community's perception of reality. No guesswork allowed. But here's the catch. Under this old covenant system, there was a massive spatial crisis. Secret geography was stationary. You had to physically go to the tabernacle or the temple. If the priest declared someone unclean, well, they were cast outside the camp. It's essentially an embodied decreation. The defiled were thrust out into the exilic wastelands, which is squarely in the accuser's jurisdiction. It's kind of like being banished to the backrooms of society. And they just had to wait there in total isolation because God's presence was stationary. An act of corruption simply cannot share space with the holy. Section 3. The mobile temple approaches. The geography violently shifts. Now, fast forward to the incarnation in the Gospel of Luke. Suddenly, the entire geography of sacred space is violently, beautifully disrupted. The passive, stationary Levitical system could only examine, isolate, and wait. But Jesus operates entirely differently. He touches, he actively cleanses, he actually invades the wastelands. He isn't just managing decay, he's causing a new creation trajectory. And why? Because he is the mobile holy presence. The Creator has finally entered his fallen creation. You see, Jesus operates as the mobile temple. The whole movement of the incarnation is outward. He deliberately travels through these deeply contested borderlands, like that fraught space between Samaria and Galilee. He doesn't just sit comfortably in Jerusalem waiting for the ritually dead to magically cheer themselves and come find him. No, the sacred center travels directly into those forgotten, liminal wastelands to encounter the people completely trapped in the accuser's isolation. With Jesus, holiness becomes this advancing power that actually defeats corruption rather than retreating away from it.
Section 4. The messianic portfolio. A creation to new creation trajectory.
So you might be wondering, how does Jesus legally prove his identity in the midst of all this? Well, remember when John the Baptist is in prison experiencing some serious interpretive doubt? He sends messengers to ask Jesus if he is truly the one. And Jesus doesn't just send back a text saying, yep, I'm the Messiah. Instead, he presents this legally binding active tense portfolio that perfectly synthesizes three major prophetic streams. He brings in Isaiah 29, where perception is restored, Isaiah 35, where the desert blossoms and the lame leap, and Isaiah 61, where captives are liberated. He's effectively telling John that the ultimate restoration anticipated throughout all of Isaiah is happening right now, in real time. But if we listen super closely to his exact quote here, Jesus does something amazing. He makes these deliberate, eschatological insertions. He adds elements of ultimate end times restoration. He says the lepers are cleansed and the dead are raised. Now, those two specific things are not explicitly listed in those original Isaiah passages. Jesus deliberately inserts them. Remember, the Aaronic priest could only inspect a quarantine, but by actively causing cleansing and actually raising the dead, Jesus is legally proving that the Creator has entered history to dismantle death entirely. And why do these specific miracles matter so much? Because they aren't just parlor tricks. They aren't just random acts of compassion. They represent the total restoration of human agency. Giving sight to the blind reopens the prisons of the mind. Giving hearing to the deaf restores their ability to receive divine revelation. Healing the lame restores their physical ability to actually walk in covenant pilgrimage. And preaching the good news to the poor, that specifically targets those locked away in exiled realities, elevating them back into valued covenant subjects. This is a full-blown new creation event.
Section 5. Inverted theater, the cosmic taunt.
This brings us to what I think is God's ultimate weapon of grace, and it really shows how he utterly humiliates the adversary. The source calls this concept inverted theater, and inverted theater is basically the ultimate divine taunt. God takes the most unlikely, marginalized agents you can imagine, the ritually unclean outcast living in a literal state of decreation, and he transforms them into a living, breathing testimony of resurrection. He literally takes those trapped in the accuser's domain and uses them to completely shame the powers of darkness. And we see this played out perfectly when Jesus heals lepers. What does he do? He sends them directly to the priesthood. Just think about the absolute legal genius of this for a second. The Aaronic priesthood is now forced to perform the exhaustive Leviticus 14 protocols: the birds, the living water, the blood, the whole shebang. The institutional structure is legally compelled to bear witness to their own fulfillment. They are forced by their own law to certify that a higher priest who exercises creative authority is operating brilliantly outside their jurisdiction. The law is forced to witness to the Messiah. It's incredible.
Section 6. The theological chasm, cleansing versus salvation.
Okay, let's land the plane on this entire theology of defilement with one final stunning revelation. From Luke 17, the story of the 10 lepers. 10 lepers are standing afar off, right? They're crying out for mercy from the mobile temple. Jesus tells them, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they walked on the road, all 10 of them received a stunning physical miracle. All 10 were cleansed. But only one turns back, a Samaritan foreigner. He comes back and falls on his face at the feet of Jesus in profound worshipful thanksgiving. Now look at the devastating linguistic chasm here in the original Greek. It is so important. The 9 who walked away, they received katharizo, which means cleansing, just the removal of the physical disease and the ritual uncleanness. But to the Samaritan outsider who returned and worshipped, Jesus changes the vocabulary entirely. He pronounces sozo, comprehensive rescue, wholeness, and eternal salvation. The 9 received the physical gift, for sure, but they totally missed the giver. The Samaritan, however, received total wholeness. And this brilliantly illustrates why all of this cosmic courtroom stuff actually matters for us. You see, the ultimate goal of God's redemptive work was never just to give people healthy skin. Physical healing is merely penultimate. It's just a stepping stone. The true goal of the mobile temple, the whole reason Jesus crossed into those exilic wastelands in the first place, was the total restoration of human perception, leading the exiled outcast into abiding, personal communion and worship of the Messiah. The Levitical priest could guard the boundaries. The mobile temple could bring the holy presence directly to the road. But only the Son of God can look at a ritually dead outcast and declare the ultimate legally binding verdict of new creation, which leaves every single one of us to evaluate our own perception of grace. Physical restoration is just the beginning. So the ultimate question I want to leave you with is this: are you just cleansed, or are you saved?